Hello and welcome back to Courtside. I'm Andrew Cohen, joined by Mike Randall, Sam Posman. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good, man.
As always.
It's All-Star break. I think we're going to go through some NBA midseason awards today. Try to get the stink off the terrible dunk contest.
Oh my god. Don't even. We didn't need to bring it up today. We didn't need to.
I like bringing up boring things. Yeah.
Poor Knicks finally win something. That's that.
Oh yeah. He was terrible. It was terrible.
It was just.
All right. Let's move on. Why don't we start off with our MVP picks? Sam.
Okay.
Who's your pick for MVP?
Giannis. Nothing more needs said.
Mike.
Greek Freak.
Me too.
Okay.
Well, that'll lead to a nice, interesting debate here.
All right, he's also my defensive player of the year. I don't know about you guys.
He is also my defensive player of the year.
He is not my defensive player of the year.
There we go.
I took Draymond.
Draymond.
When was the last time you played?
I guess we should count for injuries, don't we?
I was going to take Giannis anyway, but I think with Draymond missing the significant amount of time he has, it'd be tough.
Okay.
It'd be real tough.
Yeah, I'm sold. I'm not picking Rudy.
All right, so I'm interested why you guys chose Giannis over
I was going to
Embiid
say,
or Jokic.
let's break it down because you got Embiid, you have Jokic. Sam, do you want to start us off?
So it was Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis, which the first thing I thought of was not only is it three centers, plus Giannis, but it's three foreign players, which I thought was interesting.
That is cool, yeah.
And it's the second straight year where it's been these guys, all three of them.
And it's bigs.
Yeah.
It's dominated by bigs for the MVP conversation dominated by bigs for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
But no, I was looking at all the the advanced defensive metrics and everything. One of the weird things that stood out to me was Jokic actually is higher in defensive efficiency, or just lower, but higher ranked in defensive efficiency than Giannis is.
Really?
Which I was shocked by. Yeah, Jokic is, I think, top 4 and Giannis is 7.
This is what leads to a little bit of distrust with the analytical stuff, though, because his defensive impact is unbelievable and unmatched in terms of his versatility. Literally, probably the best example we've ever seen of a guy that can switch 1 through 5 and lock down. And he guarded Kevin Durant. Yep. He guarded Kevin Durant in the playoffs last year. He's probably going to get Joel Embiid this year.
Yep.
At some point. And I think he can handle it.
Think about most teams don't have anyone that can stop or match up with those guys consistently. He's that guy plus scores.
Yeah.
He's one of the top scorers in the league as well.
Exactly. And the thing about Embiid that I found myself drawn to a little bit was he's 3rd in the East, which is stacked this year. I think Giannis is 6th. But I think, there comes a point when domination should just kind of count more than the standing. And we all know that the Bucks really aren't a 6-spot team.
It's all within games of each other.
So
the entire top 6 in the East.
I will say this. I'm going with Giannis. And a big part of that, if I'm being honest now, is that I think Harden detracts from Embiid a little bit here once they get clicking. So if this is a true, if the season ended today, it would be close for me between Giannis and Embiid. Both of their stats since Christmas, I think both of them are averaging 33, 32 points a game on just absurd efficiency. And Embiid's a monstrous rim protector, right? So he's no defensive slouch himself. And like you said, he's played on a starless team and does have himself higher than Giannis in the standings. So as we stand here today, I think it's a good discussion for sure. I just think that as they try to incorporate Harden, which is not an easy piece to incorporate, ball-dominant wing or ball-dominant guard, Embiid likes to play in the low post, but also in the high post, on the elbow, and from behind the three-point line. So I think that'll detract from him just enough that Giannis will overtake him and win MVP.
Agreed. And similarly with Jokic, they'll hopefully get Murray back, hopefully Michael Porter as well. That might take away. He won it last year, I guess, with those guys for most of the year. But I also did a little bit of projecting here and just thinking about they were the 6th seed, or I think they're lower in the standings now, but it's so close. All it takes is one good week where Giannis is. He's also missed games recently. All it takes is one good week where all of a sudden they're the number 1 seed in the East, and at that point you're like, oh. Giannis the MVP, right? So I think the standings argument right now is a tough one just because it is so close and there is several games left in the year.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Rookie of the year.
Evan Mobley.
Mobley, yep.
This one's going to be another consensus, I think. There's not much to talk about with this one. Jalen Green has struggled. Cade Cunningham has been up and down. But Mobley's anchoring one of the best teams in the East as a rookie. I don't think any of us saw that coming. Even
No.
his best supporters, I don't think, expected
the
him to be this
impact
good
he's
this
had
early.
on that team is ridiculous for a rookie.
And similar, I mean, it's like the Giannis but offense, where it really feels like he can play all 5 positions on the basketball court. Like, he's one of those guys where you hear about the kids coming out of high school that are maybe like 6'6", and they're played as a big their entire life, so they don't develop point guard skills or kind of any ball handling abilities. But then you see guys like Scottie Pippen or now Evan Mobley, where they're coming out and they can pass with the creativity of a point guard, and they're also 7 feet tall. So I think that gives them a advantage over the competition by a long shot.
Yeah, agreed. If there's anyone else that maybe gets considered, like whenever you think of any other player, you're like, oh, they're just not even close. Like Cade Cunningham, I think I just looked it up. Has the second best odds to win, and you don't even think a second that he's anywhere close to what Mobley's done this year.
Exactly.
Cunningham was about as consensus and number 1 overall coming in as anyone besides a generational talent. I think he's not that, but I think coming into that draft, it was pretty certain he was going to be number 1 overall, and to be half a year into the rookie years, and I think every single GM in the league would now flip that to Evan Mobley is pretty impressive, considering that Cunningham hasn't been bad. He's had normal rookie up and downs. Just Mobley's been that good.
Yeah. Coach of the year.
J.B. Bickerstaff.
Agreed.
I went Monty Williams.
Really? Okay.
I did. So I understand that the Suns are a pretty loaded roster. They are coming off a finals run last year, but Golden State's been hot. It's a good Memphis team. I just think, as good as the Suns' roster is, they are not historically good. And he has them playing at a historically great level. 48-10, you're starting to push mid-60s wins as we go into the latter half of the year. Now, the Chris Paul injury is going to put a damper on that, so maybe that impacts how that record ends up, or not maybe, it will impact how that record ends up. But I think to this point in the season, I think it's an impressive coaching job. As much as Chris Paul, obviously, he's kind of a coach on the floor, to have a team with one legit perennial all-star, Booker's kind of getting there, but he's not quite there yet, and then a bunch of just really good young role players, to have them playing at a 65, 67 win pace is pretty impressive. So I went with Williams.
The other guy I considered was Billy Donovan for the Bulls, because that team has been ravaged with injuries for a while, and they're still, I think they're the 2nd seed right now. They've been the 1st seed for a while. I think that's been impressive too, to have Lonzo not play a significant portion of the year, to have Patrick Williams go down right away.
And Caruso.
Levine dealing with knee injuries. I think that's been also an impressive coaching job in Chicago. Last one, most improved player. I think this one should maybe have the most difference between us.
I stuck with Cleveland and said Darius Garland.
I was very tempted to go Garland. In fact, when I started doing my research for this segment, the first name I looked up was Garland. I'm going with Ja Morant. I think good went right from, he skipped the good to really good to, we're talking about this guy as one of the premier players and certainly one of the premier watches in the league. I pulled up the stats. I think for Garland, he improved his scoring by about 3 points per game this year, albeit the team's winning at a higher level. And, I think the team's winning at a higher level for Garland for sure. His points are up about 3, shooting a little bit better from the field. But if you look at what Ja's done, he's up almost 8 points a game this year. The team obviously has jumped up in the Western Conference to a 3 seed. It's pretty impressive what he's done. So I think it's okay to go with a great player getting better for most improved. So I think he's deserving of it this year.
Yeah, I also went Ja. I just think, you mentioned it, but like the improvement of that team overall, and you can tell how much he elevates them. I think that's huge. I also considered Miles Bridges. I also considered Anthony Simons has taken a huge leap.
Especially, yeah.
Like, he was, what, like 6 or 7 points a game last season?
Yeah, and he's like 17. He shoots 40% from 3. He's had some monster games this
He
year.
hit some big shots in big games.
I mean,
Yeah.
it almost
really
makes
good.
McCollum expendable. And not that they got a lot for him. I think they could have gotten more from him in the
If you ask
past.
Bill Simmons, Josh Hart's a really winning basketball player, and he'd rather have him on his team than
Right,
CJ McCollum.
he's been on a lot of great deep playoff runs. That is true.
Led
Let's
by
not
Anthony Davis.
invoke Bill Simmons here. Just want to have a quality sports podcast.
But that was another guy I considered. But again, like the impact of Ja, the winning of the Grizzlies this year has been incredible. And you just watch him play, and he's one of the most fun guys to watch in the league. And the stats speak to that as well.
No, that's completely fair, and I'll get to Ja when we talk about our most surprising player. But I kind of distinguished between the two a little bit, just because I thought the whole Darius Garland rise has swept the East. Not that they're it just took the East by storm, and no one saw that coming.
Yeah.
Whereas with Ja, we knew he could be great. We didn't know he could be that great by any means. But with Darius Garland, and especially with Sexton being out, I think a lot of people wrote Cleveland off. There was a lot of how are they going to play Kevin Love, Evan Mobley, and Longhorn legend Jared Allen all at the same time, and they've found a way.
The one counter argument to that is, and I consider Jarrett Allen and Garland.
I was
for this,
just gonna say
it's
this,
Garland, it's Jarrett Allen, it's Mobley, it's the whole team has really come together. I couldn't pinpoint one guy. And now you could argue, I guess the Grizzlies had a nice win streak without Ja earlier, but that team's not anywhere close to where they are in the standings without him.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the Cavs, that's what's made it really impressive, is everyone, all their big three there, they've really elevated the entire team.
That's fair.
And I couldn't pick out one guy where it's like he's the most improved player because all three of them I feel like have an equal impact. So,
And I think if you're going to talk most improved player and you're going to talk about Garland, you have to mention Jared Allen.
yeah.
Right? He's elevated, not so much, I wouldn't say elevated his game to a sense, but elevated in his role.
Yeah.
And his game has risen up to meet that elevated role, and he's been a legitimate anchor for them next to Mobley.
Yeah.
That's not a one-man band in the middle down there. It's a pretty decent Twin Towers action they got going on.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, we'll get into a couple of our own awards, we'll say. Most disappointing player. Who do you guys have?
I'm going last on this.
On last?
I imagine Mike's going to do a lot of the talking for me, but I picked Mr. Westbrook.
Okay. I figured both you guys would do that. I went with Julius Randle. So I'll go first because we might be here for an hour if we let Mike go first. I look at the Knicks and say, what were they, the 4 seed last year with Randle?
4 or 5.
4 or 5. And I think they're out of the playoffs right now, if the season ended today. So, yeah, they're the 12th seed. And he has not – I mean, he was an all-NBA caliber player last year. He was an all-star. And all of a sudden, this year, everything's down. The scoring's down. The rebounds are the same, I guess, but the assists are down. The efficiency, that's what it is, though. He was a 41% three-point shooter last year. This year he's shooting under 31%. And whenever you watch the Knicks play, it's just he's not the same guy at all. And they just gave him the big contract. And part of the reasoning behind that was, if a star becomes available, wants to go to New York, you can trade Julius Randle for him. You can't do that anymore. Yeah. I mean, we're probably a year or two. Like if he were to keep up this level of play, at the end of next year, you could start hearing them trying to dump him off for something, trying to just switch it up. And the cliche is the league's always better when the Knicks are good. And you kind of do feel that. I mean, New York's a huge market.
Oh, no, 100%. 100%.
Even in the beginning of this year, like they won the first game, the whole bing bong thing, all that. Yeah. Like it's all fun. And to just have that team be irrelevant again, not because they don't have good players, just the guys aren't living up to what they've been. They signed Fournier to, it's a whole nother thing. But with Julius Randle specifically, you were re-signed with the max contract to be the guy, and you haven't delivered on that. And the team is out of the playoffs in a 10-team playoff, essentially. And that's really just, I think it's unacceptable for someone who just got that big of a contract.
And I think a part of that does have to fall on Tibbs. If you look at kind of his past, he's always fallen off after the first year or two with the new team. Even in Chicago, like they had 2 really good years, and then it just kind of became 500 for the rest of the time there. I mean, I think they could do something similar with what New Orleans did with Van Gundy, where they brought this guy in to like coach the youngsters, teach them how to actually play professional basketball, and then you get your guy who's going to lead them to success. Because, I mean, we know that Tibbs isn't that guy. We know that Van Gundy's not that guy. But I see him closer in that fashion than I do someone's going to actually take this team in a deep playoff run.
Well, the problem with Tibbs, and I don't know if we would have gotten to the Knicks and most disappointing teams later on, they certainly are up there for sure. He outright refuses to play young players. So I think they brought him in, Sam, a little bit to counter the point you just made. I think they brought him in because they just needed basic relevance. They brought him in to do exactly what he did last year, was to get you into as a 4 seed, get a couple home playoff games, probably go out in the first 2 rounds. But you get the basketball world talking about the Knicks again, and then, Andrew, to your point, that was supposed to continue, and in a large part because Julius Randle kind of collapsed on himself, it hasn't gone that way. And I just like to say, man, contract years in the NBA give us some of the biggest aberration seasons in sports history. Yeah. Dudes will go from, like, the worst shooter on the block to Steph Curry for a season and then just be like, I got my bag.
Hey, look at
just
James
go start chucking it back up.
Thomas
yeah,
Bridge.
There are some brutal contracts in the NBA.
All right, Westbrook. Mike, take it away.
Actually, I'm going to go with Anthony. No, I'm kidding. I'll get to more Lakers players later on, but the easy answer here and the one I'm going to give is Russell Westbrook. For those of you who listened to episode 1 of the podcast, I went off on Russell Westbrook. You guys are really putting a timer up.
Yep.
I'm gonna keep it controlled this time.
It's taking up time.
For those of you who listened to the first episode, I had quite the Lakers rant. I'll keep it a little shorter. Russell Westbrook has been the most disappointing big name addition I can remember since I became an NBA fan. Now, off the top of my head, I may be wrong on that, but it's been a disaster. I mean, I know we're kind of joking around with this timer and this rant and whatever, but there isn't enough time sitting here to go over the mess that his fit has been with the Lakers. I think part of it's not actually his fault. I think it was a horrible bit of team building by both LeBron and Pelinka. And Russ's game is Russ's game. He's shown to be one of the least self-aware NBA players we've ever seen. He has never adjusted his style of play for anybody or any situation or any point in the game. And as a Lakers fan, part of me was hoping, like, yeah, you'll get him with LeBron and he'll iron some of that out. And that's just not going to happen with a made man, which Westbrook is. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But it's hard to not expect some sort of adjustment, some type of ability to fit in. And to his credit, I think he's tried. I really think he's tried to fit in. I think he's just so horribly bad at shooting. The turnovers are ridiculous. He has no sense of time and score. He's the worst late game decision maker I've ever seen. So I could keep going on and on about Russell Westbrook, but anyone who's watched basketball this year understands what a big disappointment. And almost single-handedly, he has sunk in a LeBron James championship-level team to the bottom barrel in the NBA, which is frankly just I've never seen it happen. Yep. I mean, LeBron's made a career out of elevating former stars, older players, younger players. Anybody you give him, he can win to a level with. He might not win a championship, he can win to a level with. And Westbrook has just torpedoed that. And it's incredible for a player we hold in such high regard that he's been able to do it in half a season.
What was the time on that, Sam?
2:15.
I told you I was going to keep it reasonable.
That wasn't bad.
So we're going to get into most disappointing team next. You already kind of got into the Lakers. I also went Lakers. I considered the Knicks as well. I'm kind of thinking the Hawks are probably a good pick for this too, but I look at it as like, in terms of why I didn't pick the Knicks, it's like Randall not playing well equals the Knicks being bad, right? You could expect that.
Yeah.
Whereas LeBron playing well, you should not expect, and it's not his fault, really.
As well as he ever has.
Exactly. It's not his fault. It's the fact is the team around him isn't good. Anthony Davis is hurt, and the team is, at the bottom of the Western Conference standings for a reason, despite LeBron playing some of his best basketball in his entire career. I think the Hawks are an interesting team, too, because they go on that deep run in the playoffs last year, and all of a sudden they're a 10 seed. Mm-hmm. And the defense has been really bad. And it's not like Trae Young's numbers are better than ever, but they're under 500. And when you watch them play, they just don't look the same as they did in that playoff run. And there just seems to be something off. So that's another team I think really should – I think it is a disappointment. The whole Eastern Conference is wide open. and yet we don't talk about the Hawks who made the Eastern Conference Finals last year.
No, I agree with you. I said the Knicks for this, but we kind of already got into them, so there's no need to revisit. On the Hawks, though, I'm with you on the Trae Young thing. Like, if he's your guy, and they've bought into the fact that he's their guy, is playing his best basketball, and you are not there. Are they even 500 right now?
No, they're 28-30, 10th in the East.
Then I feel like that's more indicative of your guy not being a guy than it is you not being able to surround himself with good players, because they've surrounded him with fantastic players, both sides of the basketball court. But I think the defense of Trae Rayford is something that gets overshadowed by his 40-footers and his flashy passes. Like, he is bottom 3 in the league of all players with no minutes minimum in defensive rating. That's below Kemba, that's below Russ, it's below Evan Fournier. Mm-hmm. Like, that is inexcusable. And it's not like he's guarding the best point guard every night. Like, I mean, we see LeBron, he goes out there, he guards Grant Williams in the corner when he plays the Celtics. Mm-hmm. Trae's doing the same thing. But somehow bottom 3 in defense, I think that just shows a lack of effort, a lack of caring, a lack of wanting to win basketball games. So he can do his little ice tray routine in the 3-point contest all he wants, but until he becomes a 500 basketball player, he's just going to be another Steph Curry imitator.
So I have something to say about the Lakers. One more thing, but I got to defend Trae Young here all of a sudden. I know you're not the biggest fan of him, Mr. Texas, Trae, having been an Oklahoma player, but we knew when he came in, he is a 6'1", not incredibly athletic small guard. He was never going to be good on defense. He was always going to be in the bottom third of the league in defensive rating. I understand it might be kind of hilariously low, but that doesn't surprise me. He's so limited. I get a little bit, maybe you can do the Steph Curry model of kind of hiding on defense and getting in the passing lanes, getting a few steals. But Steph's a better athlete than Trae is. Steph's been in the league longer. His IQ is going to be higher. And Steph has played with a lot of Draymond Greens, Andre Iguodala's, right? Guys who, Klay Thompson's, guys who are erasers on defense where he can really hide. So I'm not going to crush Trae. Now, are the Hawks disappointing this year? For sure. Make a deep playoff run. Ownership kind of sells out like they never have before to keep guys around to try to make another run. But I don't think any of us watched the Hawks run last year and said this is something sustainable. They're a contender coming into this year. They weren't. They were going to go back to being a kind of middle-of-the-pack team. Now, did I expect them to drop to, what are they, 10th? Yeah. No. I also didn't see Chicago coming, right? Miami's made a move. So they are disappointing, and they deserve inclusion in this conversation. But I think to crush Trae just because of the defense, he carries an absurd offensive load for that team. And I think it comes down to they're a good team in a better conference who are playing a little bit under their capabilities. But I think he warranted some defending there from that little, it just shows a lack of wanting to win basketball games.
I stand by my old man comment.
So real quick on the Lakers, I told the guys before the show I had to get this in at some point. Anthony Davis really was pushing Russ for most disappointing player. And that's not fair, except that if you watch him play, he is the just most confusingly soft player. Like, he has all the skill set Giannis has. He has all the skill set any of these bigs have. He has the defensive versatility. The guy he was in the bubble is an absolute monster. He doesn't seem to play with any they talk about he doesn't have that dog to him, and I've always kind of been like, yeah, whatever. He's a great player. He really doesn't. And it's really shown up this year when the team is struggling. They're down bad. You need him and LeBron, and especially him on defense, to elevate. He just hasn't, and I get he's been hurt. But he's played Giannis twice. And in those 2 games, Giannis is averaging 45.5 points. And I get a great player scoring on you. I do. But AD in those games is probably averaging, I don't know the stat. I'm not going to try to find it. But it's around 20. It's around 20, and the thing that I don't understand is if you look at his shot attempts, he shoots efficiently, but he'll take 14 shots in a game and be fine. Giannis will go give him a 50 bomb, and AD will take his his 11, 12 shots and go home with his 17 points. And that's it. And there's none of the, this is a big matchup, this means something. There's a conversation here, like, let's go show out. Let's go show out a marquee matchup on national television and help carry this team to a win. It doesn't feel like he has any of that. And then on top of it, he can't stay on the court. Coming into the season, the Lakers are the reason they're the most disappointing team, I think, for all of us. Now, the Nets warrant consideration for the same reason the Lakers do. When you have one of the two best players of this generation in LeBron or Kevin Durant, and you come in as a title favorite, albeit with questions regarding fit with your point guards, but each of those two players has a co-star, and you expect them to, in some way, because they have that high level of talent in at least two guys, to figure it out and be in the title picture. Both teams are not even close to the title picture right now. Brooklyn has a better chance of getting back into it than the Lakers do, but, I mean, for that to not be the most disappointing team when you come in expecting to be a title contender and you're the 9 seed, it's embarrassing. And I think Anthony Davis's effort this year, it's hard to question effort here sitting in Maine on a college campus on a podcast, but when you watch him play, it really is hard to not question his effort because he doesn't seem to care. So.
I can add to that. Somehow we're 3 episodes in, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but I went to the Lakers-Celtics game in Boston. I think it was November. And it was LeBron's first game back. It was on, I think it might have even been on ABC or something.
Yeah, national television game.
The whole ESPN cast was there. And Anthony Davis went for 37. It might have been 38. You can fact check me on that. That was without Rob Williams, obviously, for the Celtics. But I was with my buddy the whole game, and we just kept saying to each other, this guy, like, it's impressive to drop 37 points. He's doing it right in front of us. We seat hopped our way down, and we saw it, like, right in front of us. And it's like, but he just plays so soft. Like, this is the least impressive 37 points I've ever seen. And it wasn't because we were salty. I think Celtics won by 20 or something like that. But every time he got the ball, he would have Grant Williams on him, and he was scared to post him up. He would just face him right up, shoot over him. If he missed, he missed. If he made it, which he did most of the time, he made it. And it was just really underwhelming because if there was ever a time for me to be like, I'm really impressed with Anthony Davis, it's when he's dropping 37 points on my favorite team right in front of me. And even then, in his highest moment, I was not impressed by his effort, by his desire to win. It was very Ben Simmonsy in the way where he just seemed complacent with whatever happened was just going to be what happened.
Complete opposite of the utter monster he was in the bubble, which I don't understand. Usually when great players win championships, they elevate. And he's gone backwards, significantly backwards. He was bad last year, too, and it wasn't talked about. But I don't know. It's frustrating to watch.
Yeah. Why don't we get a little more positive here?
Yeah.
Most surprising player. Mike?
DeMar DeRozan.
Same
Deserves
guy.
a shout-out. There's this awesome freezing cold takes tweet that's circling around Twitter where Bleacher Report did an article on the worst offseason free agent signings in the league, and DeMar was number 1. And he was seen coming into this league as a decent player, kind of cast away in San Antonio, who was becoming a bit of a relic, right, relying on the mid-range game. Decent defender, but not the modern analytical basketball guy. He had his struggles in the playoffs. We'll see if that gets rectified. I actually don't believe it will. But in terms of his regular season performance, the man just broke, I think, a scoring/efficiency streak that Wilt had previously held.
I think it was 7 straight games where he scored at least 35 points on at least 50% shooting.
That's ridiculous.
Incredible.
It's absurd.
That makes no sense to me.
It's absolutely absurd. And I think he deserves to be in the MVP conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you expand it to 5 players, I think he has to be right there.
Yep.
But I didn't see it coming. I knew he was a good player, but this is an absolute explosion from a guy that you kind of can't help feel good for that he's had this year. But he definitely came out of nowhere, at least to me.
No, agreed. And I think what's really impressive is you think about his last few years where he's been in San Antonio, it's been his team, right? He's really been the only star player there. And it's similar now because of the injuries to some other guys. and he has elevated himself. He is a much better basketball player right now than he was a year ago. And I don't know if it's just the location change and the team's playing better and all that, but I mean, he's a career 20 points per game scorer, putting up 28 a game. During the streak where he's just gone nuclear, of the last 7 games, 38.6 points a game. He's shooting 61% from the field. Not that he shoots a lot from 3, but 40% from 3 on top of it. And he still goes out there and gets you, 5 to 6 rebounds and assists per game. And he's kept them afloat through all the injuries, which, again, is just really impressive. I don't know. I think, when we talk about the playoffs, I think because of his play, Chicago becomes a lot. I think people gloss over Chicago because they look at them and it's like, oh, who's their best player? Oh, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. That doesn't stack up to Giannis or Embiid or even like Jason Tatum on a lower-seeded Celtics, right? But the way he's playing right now is on the level of those guys. And you mentioned he's in the MVP conversation if we talk about just 1 or 2 more guys. So I think it's, in addition to just how well he's playing, it's the fact that he's so much better than he was the last 3 years. That's really impressive to me. Your most surprising player, Sam?
So I did not have DeMar DeRozan. I think it's important to mention, though, similar to how the basketball's better when the Knicks are good, I think basketball's also better when the mid-range shot is prevalent. I like the analytics, but it can make the game a little too predictable at times, and I think DeMar DeRozan's a nice flashback.
Yeah.
Now, the 12-year-olds that say if Michael Jordan played today, he'd be nothing more than DeMar DeRozan, that takes it a bit far. But to DeMar's credit, I'm with you guys there. In terms of most surprising, so I had 2 guys here. I don't mean to cheat. There's a large talent discrepancy between the 2. Fair warning.
Oh no!
I almost mentioned this guy as a joke before, but if you didn't say DeRozan, I was gonna say this guy first.
So the first one's Ja, and we already talked about him.
Yep.
But the reason I put him in surprising instead of most improved was because we all knew he could be great. We didn't know he could be a super duper star. What we're seeing is reminiscent of D Rose. I don't want to jinx them like that, but it's just taking that whole league by storm, and I think it's just awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of play and style,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And everyone loves him. That's the best part for me.
Yep.
There's no, even the old heads love him.
He hasn't knocked anyone out of the playoffs yet. It's coming.
Exactly. My other player I have here is Mr. Tennessee Grant Williams.
Oh boy.
God.
Hear me out. At first, I put this in as a joke, but I actually have
It should still be a joke.
Yeah.
I've talked myself into
It's a
it.
good joke.
This was a guy that routinely, Andrew, you can speak to this too, as a fellow Celtics fan. I don't know how many times I said to my dad or my brother, I think this guy's the worst player to put on an NBA jersey before a game. In the league for the last 5 years. I sincerely believed he was terrible. If I could hear the Stephen A. Kwame Brown rant, I would play it. Because all of those things to apply to Grant Williams. He had no actual things he was good at in basketball. He physically dropped the ball like a 2K animation more times than he caught it. But this year he's, I believe, 3rd in the league in three-point percentage.
He's up there.
He has the loudest 7 points per game in NBA history. He is crucial to the Celtics switch. He's crucial to the Celtics switch everything defense. He's best friends with Tatum. Keeps him happy. Keeps him in town. He's a great glue guy. He's fantastic standing in the corner on offense, not moving at all. I think that he's just what we needed. He has shown a desire to improve his game in ways that Ben Simmons could not dream of. I think Grant Williams is everything the Celtics needed and more. If he develops a post game, that's something, but we already saw him deny LeBron when they played earlier this year at the rim. That was fantastic. I believe he had back-to-back blocks on Anthony Davis as well. Andrew, you can correct me if I'm
Who,
wrong.
as we mentioned, at 38.
Yes.
But whatever.
No. This was in the second game.
Oh, my
Yeah.
bad.
No. Grant.
Didn't the Lakers win that one?
No.
No.
They really
Celtics
sucked,
brought out the
they?
brooms.
Yeah, sweet. Courtesy of Grant.
It's not very impressive. The Lakers aren't good this
No,
year.
it's
But I probably shouldn't give him time with Grant Williams, but I will say something. Like last year, if he had the ball on offense, I'm like, I don't know. He's the worst passer I've ever seen. It was a guaranteed turnover, it felt like, if he had the ball on offense. I think he shoots 51% from the corner this year. He is he's turned himself into a really good defender. He's turned himself into a nice role player, which the Celtics have not really had in a while.
Especially on a contract that friendly.
It's true. They've had Tatum, Brown. They've had a point guard, Horford, Hayward, whatever. But then it's like the bench is just all stiffs that Danny Ainge drafted at the end of the first round. So that's huge. I mean, if you're going to do most surprising on the Celtics, I would have said Robert Williams because he, knock on wood, has stayed healthy to this point. But
we say as he's hurt right now.
Yeah, but I don't know. Grant Williams isn't a terrible pick, but I agree, it was a better joke than an actual pick.
Now this does.
I mean, if we want to start throwing names around, shout out Malik Monk, man.
I would argue that THT was surprising how bad he was.
I don't think. No, he's never been good. He was good in the preseason
hey,
last
Lakers
year.
fans.
Summer League, baby.
Lakers fans at the beginning of this year were talking him up like, he
I got another THT rant logged and loaded if you want some
we'll
more
save that.
Lakers.
We'll save that for another time.
We're going to move on. This actually links to my most surprising team, and that is the Boston Celtics.
Okay.
If you told me the Celtics were a game below 500 right now, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me we were third in the East, I wouldn't be surprised. What surprised me about this team is the way that they've been successful. I did not think a defensive identity was ever going to be in Boston's future for the foreseeable future. And Ime he confused fans and players alike for the first half of the season.
Yep.
We were calling for his head. We wanted to reinstate Brad.
The Schroeder Smart at the end of games was brutal.
Brutal. All while leaving Aaron Nesmith on the bench, who, not to say that we have given up on yet, but our hope is dwindling. I never expected the Celtics to have a defensive identity. If you look at Kirk Goldsberry's charts on his net rating stuff, you essentially have to make a whole new panel on the chart for where the Celtics are in the defensive sector. There's not a team in the league that's close to them defensively. They have a roster for the first time since the KG era. The Celtics roster is actually designed for the way they play, which I think is a lot of fun.
Okay.
I'm getting looks for this.
Yeah, let's just throw in the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen.
I mean,
team.
I would have said the Bridgie. I would have said the Bridgie Celtics, the Isaiah Thomas Celtics.
That's fair.
But
let's go with that.
Yeah.
It really does feel like everything is not. You know what? I'm just saying. I think everything's clicking.
You guys went on a 10-game winning streak. Yes, everything's clicking.
Exactly. One game lost streak.
We lost to the Pistons right
lost
before.
To the Pistons.
That was really fun.
But the Celtics did just sign 2 players, neither of which were a center or a guard, which makes...
They were 10 days.
Exactly.
Why are we mentioning them?
Because if they were centers or guards, then Marcus and Bobby would be out for longer than 10 days, in theory.
Okay. Fair.
They
I saw a tweet
have
about it.
10 days off.
Exactly. No, they're back on Thursday. It's Tuesday. It's 2 days.
Oh, is that short?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I hope it's not
We
next
get those
Thursday.
prop bets ready. So,
Hey, we're on a college campus. We can't say that.
What did I say? I didn't say anything. Yeah.
Anyways, you're a surprising team, Mike.
With a shout out to Memphis, I went with Cleveland. I think I mentioned to you guys earlier off air that they're one of those teams. I think the Knicks did this a few years ago, where they kind of got out the gates hot. They were young. Started out as a 4 seed. You're like, hey, good for Cleveland. Got some young guys, got some early games. Kind of as the veterans are settling into the season. That's not uncommon. And you keep expecting them to go away. I think every time I check the standings, I kind of expect Cleveland to have dropped down to the 6, maybe the 7, hang around, be a fun young team. They're a legit player in the East. Now, do I think they're contenders? No, they're early. They're a couple years early, I think, at least. But the teams had some staying power. They were kind of been locked in at the 4 seed. Like we mentioned, the young Allen Mobley duo in the middle has been great.
Just traded for LeVert.
They did just traded for Karis LeVert. Garland has been huge. And then I think an underrated aspect of their season is that they lost Ricky Rubio, who, say what you will about Ricky Rubio, is a solid veteran leader, a good point guard, kind of gets you in your sets. That's important to the young team. He goes down, Sexton's already out, and they keep it going. They don't drop at all. Mm-hmm. So Cleveland surprised me not only in their ability to get out of the gates and kind of get into the big boys club in the East, but they've hung around. I mean, they're sandwiched right now in between Philly and Milwaukee with the 2 guys we're talking about leading for MVP with a couple first-time All-Stars. So they've surprised me. They've really impressed me. No, will it sustain through the playoffs? Probably not. They'll probably get bounced by a more veteran team with more star power, but they've had a really, really impressive season, and geez, you hear LeBron talk about him. He might be on the next plane to Cleveland as soon as the season ends. It's impressed too.
I think Bronny's already there.
Dude, they like
Yeah.
signed him to a futures contract.
Oh,
They're
man.
like, go to the G League and we'll just sign you and make it all easy.
Yeah. I had 2 teams here. I had the Cavs on there. I think first of all, they're the biggest winners of the James Harden trade from a couple years ago.
They are huge winners.
And they just got LeVert too for really nothing because Rubio's hurt.
Who they had traded away, right?
It was Rubio. I don't even know if they gave up a first-round pick. And Rubio's obviously out. But anyways, I wanted to talk about the Suns, and you mentioned it before when we talked about Monty Williams. But they get to the finals last year, and I think the narrative was, oh, they're here because of injuries, and mainly the Lakers, and they're good, but they're not that good. And really, the only way to calm down that talk is to come out and dominate the next season. That's exactly what they've did. I mean, they've quietly just dominated the league all season. They're 48-10, first in the league in net rating, top 5 in offensive and defensive rating. Now, Chris Paul's hurt now, but to this point, they just dominated the entire league. They're playing so far and away better than any other team. Now, I still have questions about them deep in the playoffs. I mean, they got to the finals last year, and you had Chris Paul turnovers. I still don't know if I trust Booker or Ayton without Chris Paul, and we'll find out. But I think just how well they've played coming off a finals loss has been really impressive. And we've talked a lot about like the Celtics run recently or whatever, but we just haven't heard about the Suns, and they've just quietly been doing their thing all year. And so I chose them as the most surprising team.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the reason we don't hear a lot about them is because no one wants them to be good. It's a lot more fun to see the Golden State resurgence come out of the West.
I mean,
or see LeBron.
the Suns are not some sort of like sexy Showtime team at
smaller
all.
market,
Right?
West Coast. I think they stay afloat without. I think we looked at their schedule without Paul. I think they stay afloat and they end up with a 1 seed. So, are they probably going to get knocked off this mid-60s pace or whatever? Probably, but I'm with you. Bit surprised, very impressed by their season so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We got a couple categories left before we get into all NBA teams. The next one is teams that we think are going to fall off. Now, I want to give the Suns an honorable mention. It's not really their fault. It's just the CP3 injury. That's a real fact. But they've built up so much of a lead. You would think the first seed should be safe. And it's going to be a big test, I think, for Booker and Ayton specifically, but the entire team. And I don't know if this team, and the team I'm going with here, I don't know if they're necessarily going to fall off, but I think it's more how they're going to perform compared to the predictions for the second half here. It's the Nets. And I think here's the thing. Once they get KD back, they're going to put wins together. But trying to fit together KD with Kyrie playing part-time and Ben Simmons, I think that's going to take a little bit of time. I think there are going to be growing pains there. Now, I think by the playoffs, they're scary. But I think when you look at the standings at the end of the season, I don't think we're going to be looking at them as a 1 seed. I think they probably slot in maybe just above the play-in. But I think just all the growing pains with bringing in Simmons, part-time player Kyrie. The KD injury, I feel like he's probably coming back soon, but there's no like set timeline on that. And I think that concerns me. That's a legit injury that he has. So that's why I chose them here. Again, not necessarily they're going to fall from where they are in the standings, but I think compared to the projections, which people are like, oh, they just traded away Harden, they have Simmons, KD's coming back, they're going to skyrocket up the standings. I wouldn't be too sure on that.
I went with Miami here.
Almost went with them. That's not a bad option.
I see them in the way that I kind of see the Jazz, and I told myself I wouldn't mention the Jazz the whole podcast.
Dude, there's no reason to.
Exactly. They're irrelevant.
Yeah.
Shot yourself in the foot.
Keep going.
But I think that they are kind of the Jazz of the East in the way where it's, oh, look, good regular season record. What are you going to do come playoff time? I think they're going to fall off in the regular season. There are so many young, hungry teams in the East where if they slip up, all of the sudden, in a 2-week stretch, they can go from 1 to 5 or 6. And they can just blink and that's going to happen. I don't necessarily think they're a bad team by any means. I just think the East is way too loaded for a team that is far more talented than them. Even Boston's defense, but like in seriousness, Milwaukee, Philly, Brooklyn, if they catch fire, I think any of those teams can just hop, skip, and jump them up to grandma's house at the 1 seed. And all of a sudden we're talking about Miami losing in the first round of the playoffs.
So I don't disagree with Miami in terms of where we see them finishing standings-wise, and part of that has to do with how close the East is. Now, I thought about the Heat too, and then I thought about them, and I thought about the team I'm gonna name here in a second. I actually trust them a little bit more after some thought in the playoffs than I thought I might. I think Jimmy Butler has some real playoff guts. Lowry, when last seen in the playoffs, has been really, really good. And Bam gives them a defensive versatility that, again, is he going to stop any of these bigs? No. But he's about as good a body as you can throw at him. So,
and even someone like P.J. Tucker, and they have experience in the playoffs. I trust them in the playoffs.
I think they'll do okay in the playoffs. I really do. I think they legitimately have a chance to win the East, in my opinion. You got a couple shooters off the bench. Spoelstra is as good a coach as we have in the league right now. So the team I went with, in a similar vein to what you're talking about, is Chicago. Now, very impressive season. We easily probably could have picked them for most surprising. We mentioned how great DeRozan's been this year. They've handled a lot of injuries. I think Billy Donovan's done a good job. Do I see them falling far from the 2 seed? Probably not. I wouldn't be surprised if they hung right around there. Maybe they get the 1, maybe they get the 5, right? The East is so close, it's hard to tell. How I interpreted this kind of falling off question is, when it comes to the playoffs, which is what all this sets up to, who do I see kind of with the letdown? There's always going to be one. I mean, of Miami, Chicago, Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee, one's got to be out in the first round minimum, and that's if Brooklyn gets their stuff together. I would be surprised if it's not Chicago. I think it feels like I've kind of seen this movie before. DeRozan's had some really, really good Raptors teams that played good defense in the regular season, had the 2-guard system. I just don't think they're going to hold up to the star power they're going to face in the East. I think the injuries could eventually catch up to them once they start playing a playoff schedule. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for what they've done this year. I think they're a good team. Would I like to see them go a little deep? Yeah, it'd be fun. But I think once they get to the playoffs, there's a reasonable expectation there that they kind of go out with a whimper compared to how they've played during the regular season.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Want to move on to teams that we think are going to rise?
Yep.
Honorable mention is the Nuggets, because I think they will get healthy, and they've been great all year. I'm going to go Celtics. I think the run that they've been on for a month and a half was really just incredibly impressive. I think since Christmas, I mean, they're by far the best defensive team. I think in the last month.
By what, 10 points?
Yeah, no, in the last month,
Something
their
insane.
defensive rating is 10 better than any other team. It's 96, and next is the Thunder, around 106. And as someone that watches all these games, at the beginning of the year, they'd get a lead, and you're like, how are they going to blow it? Mm-hmm. Right? And you could see the cracks, right? You could see them crack under the pressure.
RJ Barrett game.
Yeah, they are. Since then, that was kind of a turning point. Now, I don't know if there was a specific thing that happened right after that game, but that's one of the turning points. But I think the way they've played defensively has been really impressive. And it's not just that they're winning games, it's that they are blowing teams out of the building left and right. I think they were 40 to 50. I mean, they beat the Hawks by 48. They beat the Kings by over 50. They had a 50-point win against the Wizards. Just blowing teams out left and right. And that's the thing. When you play a team at the bottom of the league and you're a team in the middle of the Eastern Conference and you win by 5 points, okay, it's a good win, but we should win that. When you win by 50, it's a whole other conversation. And you have the star power with Tatum and Brown. You bring in Derek White, who I think fits in really well. And you mentioned this before, but the roster is built to how they want to play. I think that's really huge. Now, are they a deep playoff contender? I don't know. But they're going to scare someone in the first round because they can match up really well with any team, and they have the size to match up with just about anyone besides maybe Embiid. But I think that they're only going to continue to rise in the standings.
Yeah, I agree with that very much.
Was that your team too?
No.
Okay.
Both personally and professionally. But my team to rise is Milwaukee. I think they're too good to be a 6 seed.
I think so too.
I mean, if you're making that scrawny kid from Duke look good, you're going to be good. And they just have, it's proven they have all the championship pieces. We don't know if Coach Bud's a good coach. He was a Durant toe away from losing his job.
It's true.
So that concerns me a little bit. But we all know how good Giannis is. And as I've mentioned 1,000 times in 3 episodes, Giannis is Giannis and nothing more needs said. And I'll leave it at that once again.
All right. Mike? I'm smiling for a while over there.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a doozy. So you've heard my negative comments on the Lakers.
You didn't.
Oh, no.
You didn't.
Do not do this to yourself.
You've heard my negative comments.
Bowden is sending out mental health emails to make sure that we're all doing well.
Yeah.
This is the opposite.
But they have this guy named LeBron James. And LeBron James is going to put on the Superman cape. He's going to drag that husk of a point guard. And you know the SpongeBob meme where the guy's like in the full body cast?
Yes.
He's
That's
going to go
Anthony Davis.
carry Anthony Davis out of the hospital looking like that. He's going to drag their sorry asses to the... What are we looking at? We're looking at the 8th seed. We'll get to the 8th seed. That's only one seed up. Drag them into the 8th seed, where he will win the play-in tournament and get
Bounced in the first
Phoenix
round.
with... No, listen.
Hey, Andrew, you know who would never be in the play
Hey.
tournament?
Who?
Michael Jordan.
That's true.
Jordan would just get tired, be like, I need a break. I'll go get struck out a bunch of times in baseball. I'll come back when the team's good. So King James, as we will call him, will get us to the 8th seed, where Chris Paul will still be injured. And then Anthony Davis
Also injured.
will rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Get it? So they're playing the Phoenix Suns.
Yep.
Where they will beat Phoenix in 7. And then they will go on to get emasculated in the second round by whatever team they play.
How did it work out last year?
Hey,
when Anthony
hey.
Davis has come back from an injury.
He got hurt.
Yeah.
Ah, shoot. He's going to get hurt again, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That
full
would
body
imply
cast
that-
guy gets hurt again in the episode.
Listen,
I think.
Him getting hurt implies that at
Listen.
one point he's healthy.
The Lakers are the team to rise because everything I said will probably not happen. But they have been so atrocious that when LeBron James continues this play and they do get to the 7th seed or 8th seed, they will have risen and they'll get into the playoffs and make it fun.
I mean, my only counterpoint is what more can LeBron do? Right? I mean, he's
Yeah.
been playing, and I mean, the most elite of levels all year, and they still stink.
Hey,
Right?
Russell Westbrook's going to get the shooting up.
Okay.
He's going to get the late game decision making
Up to, what, like 33%?
Hey. Shooting better than Steph this year.
Yeah, but if you look at the 3-point percentage,
I'm drinking the Lakers Kool-Aid, okay?
All right.
Hey,
They're coming back. They're
That's
going to
it.
rise.
I think
Do they have the second hardest schedule in the league? Yes,
I
they do.
think we officially need to put out
Are they
like, job
buried in the
offers
nine?
for someone to give Mike a
they
hug
do.
Yeah.
after every Lakers loss.
Keep that same energy.
Okay.
Keep it.
Hey, LeBron told us to keep that energy
Keep
at the
that
beginning of the
same-
season. Everyone's been keeping that
He's
same
still
energy.
asking.
They did what he
keep,
asked.
Keep the same energy.
All right.
We're coming for...
play-in tournament.
It's the freaking, like, the Clippers and the Timberwolves. We're going to get to the 7th seed, no
Yeah.
problem.
It's too bad if both those teams stink. How bad are the Lakers
Dude,
then to be
one of the
behind them?
Morris twins is going to, like...
Are you behind the Timberwolves?
Yeah.
Hey!
Timberwolves are 7th.
Hey, the
For-
Timberwolves are a nice, feisty young team.
For our radio audience, my jaw just literally dropped.
Hey, well, the bigger problem is being behind the Clippers team that doesn't have literally any of their players.
Hey, Reggie
Yeah,
Jackson's a solid NBA
That's
player.
worse. But we're going to get past those
Well,
teams.
the Lakers would kill to have Reggie Jackson.
They
One
would
of the Morris twins
Which one?
is going to take out, not the one that Jokic almost killed, is going to take out Jokic. They're going to enact some Morris revenge. And then Murray is going to trip on the stairs like John Wall did, and the Lakers are going to get to the 6th seed.
Now, how are the
So I've gone
8th-seeded
from the
Clippers
8th
going to play
seed
the
to the
6th-seeded
seed.
Nuggets?
I think
No,
that-
in the regular season at some point.
I think LeBron has to throw a chair at and rest in the locker room, and then all the pain will go away.
Maybe some rust sabotage would help this scenario.
In all seriousness, no. I think if Frank Vogel just mans up and plays Russ the exact same way he played Schroeder last year, that immediately adds +6 projected
so,
wins.
I will say this. In all seriousness, despite whatever that rant just was, he has played him in a more reasonable role where he's not matching minutes with LeBron. He's playing him steady for 3 quarters, and then he's basing his fourth quarter usage off of how he's playing. Russ played well against Utah. He had a good game. The previous game, I'm forgetting who it was against. But he strung a couple decent games together. Now, do I really think LA is going to make a lot of noise? No. But if it's hard to let go of the talent they have, despite everything I've said about Russ and AD, that if they get healthy at some point and get it together, they could sneak into the playoffs, and then you have LeBron James in the playoff series and you see what happens. But
All right.
I had a hard time finding another team that I think will really rise. I think we're late enough in the season that teams are kind of stuck. in kind of where they are. The only other one I thought was Brooklyn, but that one's obvious, right? If guys
Yeah.
get healthy and they click, they rise up. But
All right.
thought I'd have some fun with it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was
That
a
was
good
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Coach Hammer will enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. When we get into our All-NBA first and second teams,
Do we want to do this so we go?
I think we read off our entire first team. And
Yeah.
then we talk about the differences.
Okay. So
Sam?
I have Steph as my first guard. I paired him with Chris Paul. I had LeBron in there currently. If Durant ends up like playing enough games to be considered, I would put him in there over LeBron. And then I have Giannis at my other forward slot, and I have Jokic as the center.
Okay. Mike?
So I have Steph Curry, Ja Morant, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid as my 5.
So I have the same as you, right? Ja, Steph, Giannis, Embiid. I have DeRozan over LeBron for now. I value the winning that
Yeah.
DeRozan's brought to Chicago, and it's tough because LeBron is playing. Like you just look at how well he's playing, but it's a LeBron James team, and we kind of have to hold to that standard.
Yep,
And he's been
that's
so
fair.
his team's been so good for so long.
Yeah.
And it's almost also I think you want to amplify just how well DeRozan's playing, and he's winning games. So I put him on the first team here, and he's been playing power forward for Chicago.
He's been playing great. I talked about him earlier, but we talked about the historic 7-game stretch. Is that going to continue? No, it's just not. It took that stretch for him to get within shouting distance of LeBron's production this year.
Yeah.
LeBron is at 29. He's at 29, I think, 8 and 6.5. And DeRozan's at 28, 5 and 5. Great season. In most seasons, potentially worthy of first team. I have him on the second team. I think that's where he belongs.
I have him there too.
I think name brand, the caliber of player, just he is. Despite the production, and it's there, there's a little bit of that's going to go into it. And LeBron, quite frankly, is having just such an absurd age 19 season that narrative is also going to kind of feed into it. And unless he's hurt or there's a Kevin Durant or Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's hard for voters, I think, to keep LeBron James off the first team when he's averaging 29 points a game.
One of my issues with DeRozan, you mentioned it, kind of equivocates to them winning games. DeRozan, the Bulls, when DeRozan plays and they're playing a team with a higher win percentage than like 60%, they're 8-11, which, I mean, you compare that to other guys in the MVP race, like Steph, or the Warriors are 11-4, CP3 is 10-3, Embiid's 9-4. So I think that it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with winning. That Bulls team has so much talent on it, where like if Zach LaVine goes down one night, I still don't worry about their ability to win. If DeRozan goes down one night, I don't worry about their ability to win. I think that what LeBron is doing, and I don't want to be the career achievement award guy, but what he's doing with his age considered and the audacity that Russell Westbrook has in the basketball court, I think that almost counts as a benefit for him. I don't know if I've ever seen a player just puts his head down every game and just goes to work and just cooks whoever he's playing that night. We haven't seen any LeBron concert date games, as we like to call the Steph Curry show, at all this season. And I feel like it's just not fair to have him there, but I understand that like DeRozan's trying to work towards this moment, right?
Yeah.
So
I also think, you mentioned the Bulls' talent. I mean, Lonzo's been out for a while. LaVine's been out for a minute as well. Caruso, we talked about all the injuries they've had, and he's like the one guy who consistently has been playing. I mean, maybe Vooch, I don't know there,
Yeah.
but consistently playing and putting up not just career high numbers, but way higher than what he used to do with either Toronto or San Antonio.
like league high numbers.
No, yeah. And I only imagine he's going to continue it now. They get LaVine back, so by the end of the year, I think a lot of these points I'm making might not matter quite as much. But I think right now I kind of want to recognize the way he's played and elevated that entire Chicago Bulls team, a team that has not been good for years. So
Now, you both had Ja Morant, correct?
Yeah.
So I wanted to get to this. I think you kind of just threw out the Steph Curry concert date joke, which for those of you who don't understand, Steph's shooting percentage this year has struggled a little bit. He's had a lot of games where he shot like 5 for 17,
Yeah.
5 for 20, which, if you put it together, makes it look like a concert date.
2 for 12.
I want your opinion on this. This is going to come off a bit controversially. I am almost more inclined to put Chris Paul on the first team and keep Ja and move Steph off of my team than I would be to move Ja off and replace him with Chris Paul.
I agree with that. Now, to me, I think the decision's almost made easier because Chris Paul's hurt, and he's going to miss the rest of the regular season, so it kind of made it easy.
But where we are right
now, what Ja's done is so impressive, right? Like Steph, without Draymond, to his credit, he's become a better playmaker, and Steph Curry. A bad shooting slump for Steph Curry is a great shooting day for someone like Marcus Smart, But I think when I look at what Ja's done with Memphis, it's been something that, again, we talked about before. He's the most improved player in my opinion. That team was not supposed to. It's one thing to improve from where they were last year. It's another thing to jump up to a number 3 seed and push for the number 2 seed against Steph. I also think. When you again, Curry having a down year, what Chris Paul has done with Phoenix, it's real. Just the way he sets up that team. Like you dropped him onto that team that had been perennially at best, around the 9 or 10 seed, and that team's dominant now.
They had the longest playoff drought in NBA history going into last season.
Yeah,
yeah. So, I think what Ja I want to recognize that Ja has taken this big leap where Steph. His main thing is supposed to be shooting, and that's down this year. So I agree. I would have, if I were going to put Chris Paul on the first team, I think I'd knock down Steph.
So I guess my counter would be, if his great thing is supposed to be shooting, and his shots aren't falling, and he's still in this conversation.
It's fair.
But no, I don't want to undermine anything Ja Morant's done. A 3 seed in the West right now, no matter how injury depleted the West might be, is still impressive, and especially to be knocking on the door of the Warriors, like what you said. I didn't realize how close they were in the standings. I don't think Golden State gets surpassed by the end of the season, but
it's close enough.
It wouldn't surprise me.
So Ja is averaging more points, rebounds, and assists than Steph, shooting 7 percentage points higher from the floor, with a 4-point advantage in PER.
He also leads the league in points in the paint. In a league where there's Giannis
as a what?
And
Was he 6'3" guard?
And Rudy.
It's outrageous. Now, he's only a 33% 3-point shooter, so Steph clearly we know is going to have the edge over anybody in that, but as a particular one over Ja. So I don't want to undermine Steph, but in a year that's a little bit down for him, a lot of those wins, they've won a lot of games where he's 18 points on, like we said, 5 of 20 shooting, and Draymond or Clay or a lot of these young guys, even not always those vets, come up big for him. Where now Memphis is one without Ja too. That needs to be acknowledged. But Ja has elevated the culture and the play there, and similarly, so has Chris Paul. He's just quietly managed one of the most efficient offenses in the league for the best team in the league. And there was a point where he and Steph were neck and neck in the standings, and Chris Paul's Suns have significantly surpassed the Warriors at this point. They're 6.5 up, despite the Warriors having 42 wins already. Chris Paul's averaging 15 points, basically 11 assists, shooting 6 percentage points higher, same PER. So it's tight. I don't want to trash on Steph, right? Like I said, it's going to be kind of a controversial take. He's still the best point guard in the league, I think, by a good margin. But statistically standing here where we are right now, I think you can make a pretty legit case, like Andrew kind of just made for DeRozan, right? Like it's not going to come off right. I didn't agree with it, but you can make a case that the lesser name here actually deserves to be on the team over Steph.
Yep. That's fair. Do you want to move to the second teams?
Yeah. Want to go first?
Sure. So I had Ja here.
Okay.
Darius Garland was my other guard.
Oh.
Yeah. DeRozan was my forward, and Tatum matched him. But if Durant comes back, I'd put LeBron there.
Okay.
But it's Tatum for now. And then I had Embiid at center.
All right. Mike?
So I had Chris Paul on my second team. Like I said, I'm still taking Steph over just at Chris Paul. If you were to swap one, I think deserves over Ja. Chris Paul, I had Luka. I understand the narrative with Garland. Luka's production is just absurd.
Yeah.
Then I had DeRozan here, very much deserving. I have Kevin Durant. If he doesn't play enough games to really qualify, I think it goes to Tatum. I think that's reasonable. And then I had Jokic. I think I have a hard time picking him over Embiid, so he's my second team center.
Yeah, I actually exact same. Luka, Chris Paul, LeBron, KD for now. I think he's going to come back with enough time left.
Yeah.
So, but Tatum would be the injury replacement. Jokic, injury replacement for Chris Paul. I had Trae Young,
Good one.
and this was a tough one,
I think it has to be.
but I think it has to be. Like his numbers are just incredible this year, and I considered Garland too, because that team has been really good, but just the discrepancy in numbers there is. I mean, Trae Young, I think he's up to like 27 points a game this year. 27.8 points a game, 9.3 assists. His 3-point percentage is way up. It's 33.3% this year. He's shooting fewer, which is interesting. But the offensive load he carries, even if that team is not a great team, what he's doing, he's been impressive this year.
I'm not going to counter that because I'm too inherently biased to say anything tolerable.
So to the point on Garland,
But I think you might have an argument. But I didn't say that.
I think Garland has a strong case for the third team.
Yeah.
But I think there's a point where we can get a little narrative heavy and a little, oh, this is a nice story. Luka's production is just sick. I mean, it almost feels like a down year for him. What is this, year 4, I think?
Yeah.
He's averaging 27.5, 9 and 9 on 45% shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if Garland ever sniffs that, he's probably the runaway MVP that year. And this is like, oh, Luka's out of shape and disappointing.
So my issue with the Luka thing was I think by the end of the season, he'll play his way into this. All he needs to do, he can lose 3 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, and 3 assists per game and still be on this team by the end of the year. But because this is first half, I think him just showing up and being like, I'm going to play myself into shape, I count that against him. I've never loved that. Some guys just do that, and I guess it is what it is. But in terms of first half all NBA teams, I think I have to hold it against them for the time being.
I understand the sentiment. We've talked about this off air. I was very disappointed with that. Similar vein to Zion and some of the other guys that have kind of pulled this stunt. He's young. He led a very untalented Slovenian team very deep in the Olympics. He was basically playing playoff basketball deep into the summer after playing actual playoff basketball. So there's some excusing you can do. He's not LeBron James, right? He's not an absolute machine. He rested. He let himself slip a little bit later towards the season. He started a little slow. I think I don't know the stats, but his last stretch of games.
I have it up here. Last 20 games, 30.7 points, 9.2 assists, 10.6 rebounds, shooting 45.5% from the field, 35.5% from three.
Those are all-time numbers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And some of those are in the post-Tingis era.
if we were doing third teams, which we're not, but if we were, I think Garland deserves his props.
Yeah.
And he's been a very good player. I don't want to make it sound like he's just story, but there's a point where just the production is just the production, and that's what you have to
there is a
answer to.
point where it's like you put those two guys in a room.
Yeah.
That's
Come on
more
now.
of my
Right.
argument with LeBron over DeRozan, too.
Yeah.
Is DeRozan, better team, I get the winning, better story.
Yeah, the only thing there is I think the numbers are much closer.
They are
right, and
closer,
he's
but
winning,
LeBron is better in literally every statistical category. Even if it's closer, he is better. So the production has to be the production, and then the story can match.
That's fair.
All right. It's a good episode, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think we ever talked Jokic versus Embiid.
We
kind of got with a tiny.
I'll go into it.
Yeah.
I'm always good for good big man debate.
Yeah.
So Andrew and I actually had this conversation off air. He said, who would you rather have on your team, Jokic or Embiid? I said I'd rather have Jokic if he's my first guy, and he has lesser talent around him, but I'd rather have Embiid if he's my second best player on my team. Right now, they're both the only really great player on their teams, because Embiid hasn't played with
Harden
Simmons and then Harden now, and obviously all the injuries with Denver. But watching Jokic play is just mesmerizing. Like, he just waddles around, and then all of a sudden he just pulls a pass out of his ass that you did not see come.
He really does.
Yeah.
There's a soccer player who used to play for Arsenal, actually. His name's Mesut Ozil. But he was just known for his passing. And
Soccer reference.
And there were still clips where it would just be the screen. There would just be the screen, and you would see no one else like in the realm of where you would think about where the ball would go. And then you'd see like a half a second later, and he would have found someone that you've never thought to find the ball. I see the same thing in Jokic. The fact that, I mentioned this earlier, but that he's top 5 in defensive net rating is absurd to me. When he's not known for being a rim protector, and it's not like he's going out and like slapping the floor in the open court. I think that on top of his scoring, he shoots like Larry Bird. It's impossible to contest his shots. We watched Embiid play the Celtics the other night, and we were like, we love this guy off the court, but on the court, it's just not fun to watch him play basketball. And I think the fact that those two just elicit opposite reactions in me speaks enough to put me Jokic first team and Embiid second team.
So that was a very good argument, I have to say, first off. You're making me consider this a little more. I would like to just throw it out there. Embiid traveling on the hard-end setback and getting blocked by Horford was one of the best basketball moments of the year.
It's one of the funniest things. And the clips were after the game, they're like, oh, my God, look at him. Or it was before the game. Like, in the morning, he's practicing it.
He's like he's never going to trust Harden again.
Oh, my God.
So, Sam, to your point a little bit before, I think I'm going to pick Embiid here. And, Andrew, I think you're probably with me. But Jokic, for those who don't know, is averaging 26, 14, and 8 on 57% shooting from the floor, 37 from 3, 80 from the line. His PER is 32.6. He's like the analytical king. Like, analytics have him as like a top 5 basketball player ever. Like, for whatever reason, the advanced metrics with him are just out of this world. Now, I have a hard time with this argument. I kind of flip back and forth. There's something about Embiid in the physicality that he plays with that is really hard to ignore. He's averaging 29.6, 11 rebounds, 4.5 assists, which for a normal center is really good.
Yep.
He's on 49%. He's on 49% shooting, so he's quite a bit less efficient. 37 from 3, so they're about the same there. His PER is 31.8, so his PER is way up there too. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's I don't like having to use this argument because I think you structured a good one, and there's definitely a statistical one for Jokic. But when I watch them play, I know you don't love watching Embiid play, but the eye test to me goes more to he has more of a presence, especially defensively. Mm-hmm. I think his presence has kind of this bowling ball who's just a physical monster. People have talked about him in the same conversation with Shaq, which I think is a little much, but there's a physical, nature to Embiid that is very impressive to me. And then, frankly, I don't care what the metrics say. He's one of the best defenders in the league, and I saw Anthony Davis just shred Jokic at will in that playoff series. So
and we talked about this with Gobert a little bit. But a lot of Embiid's defensive qualities you can't see because teams they won't go after him because he's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you might not see a crap ton of blocks, but it's because teams are not even risking putting themselves in that.
And he still has high blocks just to show how effective he is. And then
no one's like, Nikola Jokic is in the paint, we better stay
exactly. Clear. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're smart, he's a massive individual. Both of them are, but Jokic is just a big dude. If you're smart in the right spot in the regular season, you can get a pretty high defensive efficiency up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you comes to playoff time and teams are game planning you and stars are attacking you, Anthony Davis and LeBron had no issue with him at the rim. Embiid would be, if the Lakers were contenders this year, that's a legitimate concern, is how effective can you be down low with that type of presence in the paint. And he's mobile, so you can't play him off the court like Gobert.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. I think the argument for Jokic would be offensively, he plays really well. Like, you can put him on any team on offense, and he's going to fit in. You can put Joel Embiid in any team on offense. He's Joel Embiid. He can dominate. Jokic's going to fit in really well. He's a great passer, better all-around offensive player. But I agree. Like, when you go into a game, I would imagine big men fear playing against Embiid compared to playing against Jokic, right? Just from a physicality presence, as you mentioned. One sneaky thing on Jokic is health compared to Embiid.
Much more reliable.
So Jokic has played despite being drafted 1 year later than Embiid, he's played one more season because Embiid missed the first 2. Jokic has played 200 more games than Embiid.
Wow.
So if you're talking about like building a team around one guy, that's something to consider. If you're talking about who would you rather have on a team right now today, Embiid.
That's fair.
That's part of what I was going to say. As impressive a Jokic season is, and it's arguably better than his MVP year last year, what Embiid's done to this point this year in terms of he's carried I would argue, a less talented team in Philly than Jokic has, and in a better conference this year, as it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
That were I building a team, I think I would take Jokic. I really do, because you can structure an offense around him in a way where not only is he going to produce, but everyone around him
a really
will,
creative way.
in a really creative way. But I think to this point in the season, Embiid's presence and dominance in the East, keeping that team afloat with all the mess that's going on around him, has been really impressive. And he should, in a narrow decision, be arguably the MVP, but definitely the first-team center this year.
All while retaining an impeccable Twitter account, I might add.
I mean, that's got to boost him up a couple.
Oh, man. No, we've said this before. Like, Embiid off the court, I love so much. But when I watch him play basketball, sometimes it is a little frustrating to just see him kind of flop around, get the call. And part of it is he's a massive individual, so if he gets knocked off his spot, he's going down hard. But yeah, he's just I think he's one of the more fun guys. In addition to, so is Jokic too, I guess.
Yeah.
But, the league's in good hands with those guys in terms of
big man's had quite the resurgence.
Yeah.
We thought there were conversations not too long ago that Steph Curry had killed the center position, and here we are with two of the better offensive centers we've ever seen.
But all three of them can either shoot or be the most athletic person we've ever
seen. True. That is true. Yeah. The margin for error is a big man in terms of being able to play on the floor is much smaller than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But the fact that these guys have been able to do it at their size is unbelievable.
Really impressive.
It is.
All right. I think we should end it off there.
Yeah,
thank you guys so much for listening. This wraps up episode 3 of New Courtside, you could say.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening. See you guys next time. Thank you guys so much for listening to Courtside. Please subscribe wherever you're listening. Leave a like, a review. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next week with some more Courtside. Thank you guys so much.